low density, blue, and some cases black and white is medium. When do we use the total black?
Okay, so this is the RX compression fitting, and in fact, up until about the year 2000, something like that, almost all of the municipal pipes in New Zealand were high density, and in fact a lot of rural areas also have a lot of high density installed in their properties, because you had low density, which was a low pressure pipe range, and then you had high density, which covered up to 175 psi, something like that, or 12 bar.
The bar being the height and...
Yeah, so 12 bar is 120 metres of head, roughly.
Is that what we're talking about with irrigation schemes and water schemes in the rural sector?
Very much. We're talking about elevational change. Anytime we've got elevational change, we've either got to pump the water up, or we're pumping the water down, or the water's gravitationally flowing down. Every time we've got 10 metres of difference, we've got something like 14.7 psi change.
So we're looking at these, people say, well, the tank is filled because I'm on the Chertsey scheme or the whatever scheme. That's all part of, they've been around for a long time.
That's right. I mean, they're schemes that probably originally would have had high density pipe in it. So very likely to have these sorts of fittings. Now these fittings, the RX compression range, does 15mm, or the old half-inch pipe, up to 40mm or inch and a half in low density. It also does the same range from 15 to 50mm in high density.
And also we've got the fact that in the old days you did it with the internal, but
internal dimension, yes, correct. For example,
nothing confuses us more, but it's okay.
A 2-inch high density pipe, for instance, is 60.4mm OD. Okay, in metric, the closest would be 63 OD. In low density would be 56.6 OD. You confused yet?
Yep, that's okay.
Right. So
I can contact one of your suppliers and they'll explain it to me.
Absolutely. So older systems, as a product for older properties, this is not a bad solution, because it covers low density up to 40mm and all of the high densities up to 50mm. Slightly different fitting arrangement as compared to low density, in that we, in this case, need to chamfer the end of the pipe.
Yep.
So we're going to pare off a small amount on the top of this pipe. We're doing it nice and evenly. Now this aids the product pushing past the O-ring in the fitting.
So these have got O-rings in them?
Yeah. If we, for instance, take this apart, we've got a nut that fits on the outside of the pipe. We've got a grip ring which holds the pipe from pulling out of the fitting. We've got a sleeve, and in this case we've got an O-ring. So what we're doing in this particular case is, once again, the nut is loose, and then we simply insert this. You can feel that that's up to the O-ring, and then we're pushing that past the O-ring right up to the end.
Yep.
And then doing this up, and in this case we'd need to use a pipe wrench just to give that an extra tighten.
Yep.
But the sealing is done by the O-ring on the outside surface of the pipe. So whether that's low density in this case or high density, the effect is the same.
So if somebody puts a fork through it while they're doing something in a veggie garden, you need to put one of these in to repair it.
Yeah, and in fact, if you've done that in a veggie garden like that, you're going to need more than one fitting. So don't just pick one, you would need at least two.
You need two?
Yeah, because when the pipe's sitting in the ground and you've got a hole in it, you need to cut it and slide a fitting in, and have enough room to actually pull it up out of the ground to get it back in. So it's a much bigger task than just fixing that hole.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're putting a new tank in, or putting a new a trough in, the same sort of thing?
Same sort of thing if you wanted a fitting off it. There are other solutions like tapping saddles where we could actually bolt a saddle on to fix a small hole like that. But that's another story, another time.
And when somebody puts a fork through it and they come into one of your suppliers, what are they asking for?
They'd be, if they knew the pipe was old pipe, then they would ask for an RX compression fitting. And in 99% of the cases, it'll fix it. There was some small amounts of other pipe outside of the normal standard that were also manufactured. You need to be aware, but it's your best guess.
And in that stage, you were actually measuring the inside hole, not the outside diameter.
Yeah, or as we said earlier, taking a sample of the pipe into the rural company and getting them to determine that for you.
Does actually remove some of the problem, doesn't it?
Absolutely.